Are you a parent navigating the complexities of co-parenting, family court, or even domestic violence? If you are looking for ways to help protect your children and build a strong and supportive community around you, then look no further. Gray Minds Think Alike is your go-to resource for everything related to the complexities of family life. Join us as we dive into thoughtful conversations with experts and explore practical tips and strategies for tackling the challenges of parenthood in the throes of adversity so that no parent feels alone and every child's safety is protected. Welcome back to another episode of Gray Minds Think Alike, where we dive deep into conversations that matter most with experts who enlighten, inspire, and empower. I'm your host, Ali Kessler, and today I'm joined by Dr. Karalynn Royster, a child psychologist, co-parenting expert, and the creator of Kids First Co-Parenting Program at learnwithlittlhouse.com. Dr. Royster has dedicated her career to helping children and moms who are navigating the overwhelming stress of divorce and high-conflict parenting. Her work is not only professional, but deeply personal. She grew up in a high-conflict family herself. That full-circle perspective inspired her to design a program that finally speaks to moms who feel like they've tried everything, yet still can't find the right support. Her mission is simple, yet powerful. When moms think more clearly and feel empowered, their kids will feel more secure, and that changes everything. So thank you so much for joining us today and coming on. If you don't mind, if you could just give a little background to our listeners and how you got to do the work you do today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Ali. I'm really excited
Absolutely
to be here and really admire the way that you're sharing your story and how you're moving through the world with this horrific grief.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Your loss. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's everybody's worst nightmare. So I am a trained child psychologist. That's my background. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've always wanted to work with kids. That's always been the jam. Yeah. And in the therapy world, I don't want to speak for everybody, but in the therapy world, a lot of therapists do not want to work with high conflict families. They don't want to get pulled into court. They don't want to get grieved. They don't want horrible things happening to their patients or their patients' parents. Like why? Why would I deal with that when I have all these other options? And initially I took that advice being a little, I guess, maybe more on the anxious side of, I would like to keep my career. I started out very much, I'm not going to deal with that. Right. But everyone that works with children will tell you, like, this is such a common experience. It happens with so many families that even when you're trying to avoid it, you're never going to actually avoid it. Right.
There are so many divorce rates now. It's like kind of opposite.
Right. Well, and you can be a OCD expert. And what are you going to do? Not treat any kids with OCD that have two-parent homes? Like, you're going to find it. And so over time, I started to find myself with these cases and really can relate and work with these kids, I think, in a really interesting and good way because of my own experience coming up in that, and started to become known as someone that would take those cases and did well enough with those cases, I would say. But as the clinician working with the children, there's a lot of things that you can't do. Even if you see the dynamics, even if you're like, well, that person has personality disorder. This is what really went down and I know it. I have to stay neutral for the kid. And so the coaching business, it's a totally separate business from my therapy practice, which does give me the freedom to be more directive with moms in particular. And so I'm able to say, look, this is kind of what's going on as I see it. This is how you help your kids through this. And here's what I want you to say. Here's how I want you to respond, right? It can
to the child, you mean?
No, to the parent.
To the other parent. Right. Okay. Yeah. I think that's the hardest part.
Coaching, right?
Right. That's a really hard part because I know with my son, he had a few issues when he was just like 2, 3. He had sleep issues and a constant transfer back and forth from household to household had a big impact on him. And I spoke to a child psychologist who wanted to do like some play therapy. Mm-hmm. And we did like one session or whatever. And then I didn't know how to even tell Greyson's father what the findings were or even talk about it because I would have been attacked for even taking him. So that's the hardest part. So how do you deal with that?
Well, so that's an interesting thing too. Another reason that I have this separate business is because a lot of times in difficult dynamics, which encompasses many things.
Yes.
If I'm going to work with a kid in therapy and it's a high conflict situation, I require both parents to consent. And we have very clear conversations about what this looks like, what I can do, what I can't. Many times I have moms come to me and say, there's no way he'll consent. He'll block this. He'll ruin the relationship. Why would someone that's actively abusing your kid want you to talk to a therapist? They don't, right? So they block it. And that puts moms in a really tough situation because they're like, my kid needs therapy. I would love to get them into therapy, but the legal system isn't, or it takes a long time is what I should say.
Yeah. Unless that parent has the 100% decision-making in their agreements.
Unless they already have that. Right. And so it's a way for me to work with moms without needing to see the child and work with them therapeutically, which does not mean that that doesn't need to happen. But it's my way, like with you, to be able to say like, okay, look, when he comes back from dad's house and he tells you this, here's how I want you to respond. Not from a legal strategy perspective, but from a keeping your kid okay perspective. You know?
And the parent okay.
And the parent okay. Because the same old advice of like, don't talk shit about them, don't talk badly about them, or just ignore it, take the high road, don't talk about it at all, or dismiss it. He's not manipulating your kid. There's no way, right? That stuff doesn't work with those dynamics. And you have to say something a lot of time.
Especially if your child's older and they pick up on things. They know everything.
Well, and that's the tricky thing with the little guys is because they do show us they're struggling. They just show us in different ways. And it can also be, it could just be potty training regression because we're 3 and that happens sometimes, or it could be something's going on. And that's what's so hard.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have your regular practice and then the Kids First program. I guess tell us about the Kids First co-parenting program, how it's different from traditional therapy or co-parenting advice. I know you said you deal with the mom or one parent, I suppose, but what makes it especially effective for moms?
Yeah. So it's funny. This journey's been funny because the things that I thought would be really helpful, I mean, I think they probably still are, but they're not as helpful as what some of the moms tell me is the best part. So the program is designed, we have a ton of video lessons. There's over 100 lessons of me teaching on anything from transitions to how to talk about this, how to keep them out of the middle, anything like that. And that's where I thought people would like love it. Kind of, I almost thought of it like a book, like you could just flip to the chapter you needed.
Right.
That's not what people love the most. What they love the most is every week we have, I call them co-parenting power hours, but they're a Zoom call and whoever is in the program and wants to hop on, hops on. And then it's myself and the other moms, which that is not to be discounted because having other people that are going through it with you is really powerful.
Absolutely.
And people will offer advice from their own situations that I don't have, right? I haven't worked with that specific attorney or something. Right. And so that's the real beauty of it. And then of course we have like an online message board and that I share resources all the time. That's the big program. That's what, is kind of the biggest, best option for people. It's 6 months. And then we do like a monthly membership based off that.
And it's virtual, so they can be based anywhere, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Great.
Yeah. And then I offer a lot of smaller items that people can use. I just developed something I'm really excited about. It's like a tech plan about how to, because I was hearing a lot of like FaceTime calls are a nightmare. It's recording the calls. I don't know what to do when this happens. Kids crying. I mean, you name it, it comes up on FaceTime calls. It's a really good way to manipulate and control someone.
Yeah.
I developed this whole lesson about it and all these ways and support methods for people, tracking systems and handouts and frameworks and stuff like that.
There was a tracker on my car. Yeah.
I know. I read that happened to you.
Yeah. So I wish I had known. I would have called you.
You know what though, Ali? I mean, I know that your experience is not unique, sadly. And some of that is so high level, like just so intense. So
no, it happens more than anyone even knows.
I know.
Yeah. We actually, I'm going to go on a tangent here, but here in Florida, new law is passing like this week about Apple AirTags, about putting them in people's belongings unknowingly, that it's illegal, which is interesting because I guess that's a way of tracking someone is just slipping a little AirTag. You know, you never think about little things like that. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, we have with the introduction of technology, right, in a high conflict dynamic, the idea is it's so layered because we don't want to be accused of preventing a relationship, right? They're allowed to have a FaceTime call, They can text. But then once we get phones and smartwatches, We have a whole nother layer, and we have a whole layer around location tracking and access to the child and who has access to the phone and how can you listen to other people. Like, it's so layered.
Yeah. Or
and so
they
I
have
usually
nanny
talk
cams,
about,
or they have little cameras in like teddy bears that they give the child. I've heard it all.
And I think, let's try to avoid that stuff as much as possible. We know it's not good for kids to have tech too early. Like, we know it can be manipulated and used. And then the other part of me is like, but when you're sending your kid into a situation because you have to, and it's not safe, we want them to have a way to contact you, right? Because that's another way we manipulate people is we remove their ability to call for help. Literally, it's abuse. Can't do that. So, I mean, obviously this is a little bit for older kids than your son was, but it's a layered issue,
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And we weren't even allowed to communicate via phone. We were supposed to use like an app called Talking Parents, but clearly we didn't abide by that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think some of those apps have gotten way better at holding, in particular, I think Civil Communicator does a better job of like screening and pulling abusive content and like holding it back, but it's still happening. Still, it's still a problem.
Absolutely. So from your perspective as a child psychologist, what are the most common ways kids are affected by ongoing conflict between parents, and what can moms do like right now to help their children feel more secure?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things in there. So it's pretty common and it's healthy for children to struggle post-separation, whether that's a formal divorce or just like we're going our separate ways. About 2 years, we see those difficulties. And that's if we're moving towards more collaborative co-parenting. Okay. So a lot of folks, I want to give them a little hope. Like if you've just separated and it's pretty hard right now, it doesn't necessarily mean it always will be, right?
Sure.
If you separated from someone relatively healthy-ish, right? However, there are a lot of people, I was just listening to you talk to Dr. Romani recently, and she was talking about like this idea that things were really bad in the relationship and then you separate and it's just a whole nother set of really bad problems. These are the people that I am managing and working with. And so in those dynamics, unfortunately, the research is very clear that the more conflict, the more stress kids have. The more stress they have, the less well they do. Like we know that the outcomes are not good. Pretty much any measure that you look across, whether it's school, drug use, sexual activity, acting out, anxiety, there's a correlation. It's not necessarily causation, but there's a lot of factors, right?
Sure.
But more conflict, more stress, not so great for kids, right?
Okay.
What can you do as a mom? Well, you can do your absolute damnedest to keep the conflict out of their orbit, right? This is not getting into it at transitions. This is not picking up your phone with them in the back seat and being like, and then responding like you want to, right? You can still do that. You just maybe need to do it after bedtime when they aren't as likely to hear it. They may still hear it. So it's about managing your own responses to keep them out of that conflict as much as possible. And then this kind of empowerment from you as the mom that you can only do what you can do, and you can do your best to have a good relationship with your child in your home. And the idea is that gets carried with them, right? When they're not with you. And so there's a lot you can do around this. I think today goals, things you need to do is like have a good therapist.
Right. Yeah.
Have somebody that knows about narcissistic abuse or domestic violence or substance, whatever is happening, personality disorders, anything in that arena. You want somebody that gets it. A lot of women need coaching as well, whether that be like a generalized divorce coach or someone who works like more, if you're worried about your kids, someone like me that works with co-parenting. You need support. You need other moms that are going through it. You need people you can complain to. You need people that'll be like, listen, Ali, you got to settle down a little bit on this one.
Yeah.
Or
pick your battles.
This is a problem. Go kick some ass, right?
Right.
You need all these people. You need a team is really the biggest part of it, I would say.
Absolutely. It does take a village. We all know that.
It does.
Now, I'm just curious. Let's say this is like a two-part question. I know you've heard of parallel parenting where everything on your time goes on in your household and everything on their time is on their household. If the other parent has narcissistic personality or any type of mental health issues, how do you keep your child from learning that behavior, especially when they're with the other parent just as much?
Man. I mean, that's
a good question.
That is a very good question.
Because nobody wants to raise a narcissist.
Nobody wants to raise a narcissist. So I think, like all good psychologists, the answer is it's very complex and it depends. But the basis of narcissism, usually, or kind of anything in that area, antisocial a little less, but narcissistic, borderline, histrionic, that kind of cluster of personality disorders. The piece to keep in mind is it often comes from a place of deep wounding. Usually they've been hurt very badly as young people, and deep, we call them like attachment wounds, like people didn't show up for them in the way that they can. And so I think if we think about it that way, and that it's a reaction to that wounding, that sort of puffed up persona, what we want to teach our kids is that those places of vulnerability are valuable and worth exploring and worth sitting in and not defending against, in theory, right? Okay. What would that look like? That would look like, instead of when they fall and they get hurt and they start to cry, and then the kid gets up and is like, I'm fine. I didn't get hurt at all. That stupid sidewalk was in my way, right? Blaming someone else. Some of that is typical kid behavior. That's pretty normal response for a child. But you may add in a little bit of, it's okay to be hurt and people can help you.
And cry.
I can help you. Yes. It's okay to cry. Like really paying attention to those tender and vulnerable moments. Okay. If you have a kid going back and forth into a really narcissistic environment, they are very likely to say to you, no, it's not. No, it's not. Dad says I shouldn't cry.
Like talk back. And
Dad
stuff.
says only sissies cry, right? Because they're getting that message. And so then you explore that message with them. You say things like, wow, people have really different views on if it's okay to be sad or not. What do you think about that? Right?
Right.
The other piece
Daniel
is...
Tiger has a whole song that says it's okay to be sad sometimes, little by little. You'll feel better.
Yeah. And take a deep breath and count. Count to 4.
We sang all of them.
They're the best.
4. Yeah. They really are.
Yeah, it's count to 4. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think the other piece for moms, and this is why it's important to have your own good therapist too, is that it's nearly impossible when you have someone in your life that you're afraid of or that you really dislike or has hurt you really badly, whether that's your mom or your dad, your own mom, your own dad, or your ex-partner. It's really scary when we see things in our kids that kind of echoes that.
Right. Yeah.
And we get triggered. And so it's important to have someone that you can talk to and be like, when they did this, I got really scared. Like the lying really triggered me. And to explore why that is. Why did it trigger you, right?
It might help to keep a journal. Like if a parent notices some sort of behavior for their child, to write it down so they can be like, well, my child did this. What can I do to prevent it from happening again?
Right. I see this a lot too with things like lying. Parents get really in the weeds of we don't want to raise a liar. Or my ex-husband lied all the time. It's really triggering when she lies. And then being able to bring it to someone like myself or your friends or even friends that aren't going through divorce and have them be like, oh yeah, well, my kid lied last week about this. And you're like, oh, right. This is something that 6-year-olds do, right? Maybe it doesn't mean she's going to be a narcissist. Maybe it just means she wanted the candy and that's fine.
Right. I mean, everyone lies.
It's good to have a check and balance, right? Around what we're blowing up and what we're not.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now I have so when you, what?
I said, gosh, that was a good question.
Well, these are things that I think about. Mm-hmm. So when you do have children as your patients, I guess it also depends on their age, but let's say for younger kids and then older, what does a session look like? If they're younger and maybe not able to express things to you, I heard of play therapy. It's something that I wanted to do, but we never really did. Can you just explain sort of what each step would look like for maybe each type of age group?
Yeah, that's a really good question. There are many different types of therapy. So not everybody knows, but therapists are trained in different modalities, we call them. So some folks are way more behavioral. You'll see things like chore charts or behavior charts and incentives and consequences.
Yeah.
Some things incentives are more play-based, right? Yeah. So usually with kids, we're doing some sort of play intervention because we think about the play as the language that they're using. And so all therapy starts with intakes with parents. We always want to give parents an opportunity to tell us what's going on, not in front of the child, right? I want to know the context. I want to know the family system. I want to know the history. If there's been custody evals, I usually read those. I want to know what's up. I want the dirt. And I also want the dirt because when your little 4-year-old tells me, well, dad was cheating on mom, I need to know if that's true or not because I don't want to be gaslighting them, right? Myself as a therapist.
Right.
I integrate some folks with play. It's very child-led. They don't lead the play at all. They're interpreting things as they come up. Like there's so many cool things we can do with play. I do talk with kids a little bit when I'm playing with them. I will often sort of nudge them in the directions that I think we need to go.
Right. It's like flipping greens in their smoothie.
Exactly. That's exactly it, right? Older kids, it depends on the age. I have some 10, 11, 12-year-olds that love to play still. We typically are doing play that's more like board games. We have a football. I have the football like on the floor next to me where we're tossing it back and forth. We usually need to do something instead of like, we're going to sit on a couch and talk. It just doesn't really work with kids. I find my like early teens and preteens really like to sit on the couch and act like adults and have a conversation. Right. And in that way, I work from a very like psychodynamic, a little bit of CBT integrated with it, where I'm just kind of like, what comes up for you today?
Is that behavioral therapy?
Cognitive behavioral therapy. Yep. Yeah. And that's a lot of like noticing your thought patterns, challenging those thought patterns, teaching yourself how to think differently about things, right? How to gently challenge yourself, taking perspective. Things like that. With kids in divorce scenarios, there's some pretty common themes we see. Okay. So very commonly kids feel like it's their fault or as if they could fix it somehow. There's a reason that's like a very, common divorce advice. And that's because kids think it all the time. There's a lot of anger, usually. There's a deep sadness. Divorced kids get told a lot. Things like, you have 2 Christmases. Right. And they're like, I don't care. I would rather not have 2 Christmases if my parents could be together. And sometimes there's complicated feelings because they didn't want to be in that house and they wanted their parents to get divorced. Right. And that gets strange too. A lot of times we're doing trauma work as well because there's some sort of either what we call like a relational trauma where someone really deeply hurt you, their words or actions or not showing up, or they witnessed domestic violence or emotional abuse or something pretty scary. Yeah.
Now, what happens now, I guess, as a doctor, if a child client tells you something that, you feel like you want to intervene, do you ever have to go to court or how does that process work? Like, let's say the child said, my parent hits me.
Yes. So
what would you do in that scenario?
We report to Child Protective Services and they'll intervene, at least here in Colorado, fairly quickly if it's an imminent issue. Meaning like if the person that hits them is sitting in the waiting room, I may have to call the police and keep the kid here to make sure they're not going to be hurt. If it's like he hit me once 3 months ago and I'm not going there until Friday, I would call CPS. So depending how pressing the situation is. So yes, we have reporting standards for sure. We do get called to court and we do get asked a lot about what we think would be helpful for the child and do we have concerns about certain things. That's a big mistake that folks make with therapists is that they think that we can make custody recommendations and we cannot. There are psychologists that can, but they enter the case differently, right?
They're evaluators.
They're evaluators.
Yes.
And they evaluate everybody, right? Whereas in a therapist role, I haven't done that. And so sometimes we get called to court and they're trying to get us to do that, but we can't. And so that is really frustrating for everybody because we can't do that. But there are times where they'll call to court and ask you something like, did so-and-so say this to you? And you're like, yeah, they did. Like, do you have concerns about this relationship with this parent? Yeah. If you have good evidence, you can say things like that. You want to try to avoid putting the therapist in that role because if the kid gets whiff of you like taking a side, you've destroyed the neutral safe
their relationship. Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. Now, what would you recommend for a parent to tell their child if they don't want to go to the other parent's home for their visitation? What's the best way to talk to the child? Because they have to go and you want to make it, as amicable as possible. I know for me personally, I have a video of it because it was so heartbreaking. Greyson did not want to go to his dad's. It was Father's Day, so he had to go because that was in our agreement. And the entire video was him in the back in his car seat, hysterically crying, saying, I don't want to go to daddy's. I don't want to go to daddy's. And here I am driving saying, but you love going to daddy's house and you're going to have so much fun and you guys are going to play and you guys are going to try to make the experience, and then of course, once you're there, I'm sure they're fine. But what's the best approach to talk to the child?
Yeah. So the best approach that you can do, it's a fine line. That's what I would say. If you're not concerned, right? I think it depends on your co-parenting dynamic. So for some people that have pretty collaborative co-parenting dynamics, you can say things like, listen, sweetheart, like, lots of times we do this, and then I know for sure you have a great time because you come home and you tell me, right? That's a very different situation than when you're sending your kid into something they really don't want to do. It's very clear, right? But the court says you have to. You have to. Like what you were saying. I would say in those dynamics, I often coach moms to really validate the feeling the child's having. Like, I know this is really hard. You really don't want to go. I'm so happy you're telling me that. What are we going to do together about it? If they're old enough to do that, right?
So acknowledge their feelings.
So you're acknowledging the feeling. You're acknowledging how hard it is. And you're not saying things like, you're going to be fine. Like, it's going to be so fun when we know it isn't.
Right.
Right. Like,
well, he was 2. So, he just didn't want to be away from mommy.
Yeah. And you just say like, it's hard to be away from mom. I miss you too. Right. And it's really important that you have time with your dad as well. If it's someone that the dynamic is that this person is going to say like, well, he always seems happy to see me. There's never an issue. You may say to your child, it's okay to talk about your feelings with me and your dad. And so if you want to share with him that you're having a hard time, you absolutely can. What you want to avoid is saying something like, make sure you tell your dad this, make sure he knows too, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
well, I know for me, when Greyson didn't want to go, it was most of the time because he missed mommy. So we read a book, the invisible string, and we'd always talk about, I'm pulling my string. I'll be there. You'll feel it. So that was a great way for us to sort of, say, you're going to be good. And I'm thinking of you. I'm pulling my string.
Yeah. And so there's 2 pieces of that sometimes I talk with moms about. What we want to do. We don't want to hype up your time away too much. You don't want to be like, and I'm going to go to the spa and I'm going to have this great time without you. But
Right.
you also don't want to put it in a position where it makes the child feel like you're just like pining for them when they're away, because you don't want them to feel responsible for your emotions either. So you can say, you know what? I'm going to get some things done around the house. I'm going to put away laundry. I know you hate putting away laundry. I'm going to put some of that away for you. I will be thinking of you, but I will be okay, is kind of the message you want to send. Another good resource is the kissing hand. It's like a little book about raccoons. And when she misses her son, she like kisses his hand and they draw a little heart on each hand and then he can look at it while he's on. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a tricky dynamic and it really depends on your situation. Okay. But what you want to avoid is like the gaslighting, right? Of like,
I guess in all situations, just try to spin things in a positive light.
Yeah.
So,
and even just like you're telling me, you're getting it out. I appreciate that. I'm happy you're telling me how you feel, right?
But you still got to go.
You still got to go. And in these high conflict situations, you do still have to go, because it is not the type of dynamic where you can be like, she's having a really hard day. Can we move it to tomorrow? Like, you can't do that.
Right.
Because if you avoid the visit, then you're inhibiting parenting time. And that's going to get you against you.
Can put you in jail. So now I want to sort of talk about ways that co-parents can be amicable. What are some tips to sort of make it, obviously you want to do what's best for your child. You want to have the best experience for everyone involved. But for some people, it gets, somewhere in the road, it gets split to something a little uglier. What's a way to sort of maybe either bring it back to good or just to get on the same page? Let's just be this way for the child. What would you recommend?
Yeah, geez, if I had an easy answer to that, I'd be like a multimillionaire. I think.
Besides therapy.
I don't even know that therapy always is. I mean, I love therapy. I'm a big fan, but there are some dynamics where I'm like, you could be in therapy forever with that guy and nothing's going to change there, right? I think if it is a person that shows insight and shows genuine concern and care for you and has shown through your child and through their actions that they're trying to grow and trying to learn, then you can make a decision around like, we can work on this, right?
Okay.
You need those things there first because it's
fundamentals.
You need the fundamentals of like the basic intent to be a good human, to be a good friend to you, right? And so an example would be they say something mean about you, right? And your child tells you that, and maybe you address it on your co-parenting app. You say, look, I heard, or this is something that came up. And they say, you're right. That was out of line. I thought they were in bed. They weren't in bed. I was airing some grievances. It wasn't appropriate.
Right.
I'm something like that, right? You're not asking for perfection, but you are asking for insight. Like, you're right. I did do something wrong.
Right.
Narcissists will never do that. Never. And so someone that's trying to grow and learn and is willing to say to repair with you and the child. It doesn't have to be like you're not married, but it does you need to have that effort. That's the basis of a friendship, right? Or a business-like relationship. Shoot, I missed the deadline. I'm sorry, I'll get right on it. Instead of, you didn't tell me what I was supposed to do. So that kind of thing. And if you have that basis, then the ability to do some of our really good co-parenting skills, like assuming the best, communicating, like getting responses back from each other, being able to manage conflict, knowing when the conflict gets high enough that you need a decision maker or someone to come in and help you. AI is like the best tool on the planet for collaborative co-parenting.
Yeah. I actually have on my website on Greyson's Choice, we use Amy Says, which is actually the creator of Amy Says is from Colorado.
Really?
Yeah. So it's a great tool for domestic violence or anyone really, just to put in a situation and they give you a response on what to do next.
Yes.
So
I often recommend Best Interest, which I like because you can be the only one that has it. Unlike like Talking Parents or Civil Communicator, which you're both ordered to have and use.
Right.
This you can put on your own phone and it will do all those things and rephrase stuff. And I think anything like that. I mean, I use AI all the time. I write an email and I'm like, ooh, I sound intense. Like pop this in ChatGPT and say, make this sound a little kinder. Or sometimes I'm like, make this more firm. So I think that that's a huge, huge tool that we've never had before in the co-parenting space.
Right. That probably is very helpful.
Yeah.
Because it shows you maybe a different perspective of thinking of how to sort of come to that level of getting across to another type of brain. So that is definitely helpful.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you got to get yourself right first. Like you both are on a healing journey, whether you like it or not. And kind of this acknowledgement of we're in different places on this healing journey. And I might be really in the angry phase. And that's not the time to sit next to them at the soccer game. But maybe in 6 months, I might feel different. And that's okay, you know?
Absolutely. Okay. So for the parents listening who feel completely drained and doesn't know where to begin, what would you say the first step would be to take towards creating a calmer, more stable environment for the children?
Their own support. I really believe that. I live by, as a mother, that adage, like you can't pour water from an empty cup. And boy, do we as moms try.
Right.
We really try.
Or the oxygen mask comes down and you got to take care of yourself.
I told that to somebody else. I was like, what mother is ever going to put that on herself first? None of us. Like, I know. You tell me every time, but I'm still never doing that. And so but there is some truth to it. Like moms will move mountains to get their kids into therapy and to get their kids the support they need. But honestly, in these high conflict dynamics, it's you that needs the support. Right. You're the one that they're crying to at 11 o'clock. It ain't me, the therapist, you know, like you're the one that has to send them out to the transition. Like, how are you okay? That's where you got to start, I guess.
Right. Do you ever work with the parents therapist? Like maybe sort of, I don't know, talk about strategy for the child and the parent?
It depends. Usually, quite honestly, Ali, I find that a lot of my mom's psychologists and therapists are impressive therapists. So I don't feel like I need often to be like, hey, why don't you try this? Like they're usually way ahead of me.
Well, I meant more like if they had something to try with the child, they have, so that way both ways can communicate. Or
I think that's when it works that way and it works well, it's great. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. If we can do that, it's like the best of both worlds when we can kind of bring those pieces together. It's pretty great.
Okay. So how can people find you?
Yeah. So I'm on lots of social media. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Learn with Little House. I have a podcast called the Kids First Co-Parenting Podcast, where we dive into all these topics. And we sometimes have guests on too. I usually do those as a bonus, have interesting folks on.
I'm happy to come on anytime.
Ali, I would love to have you. I hope you mean that sincerely because I'm going to.
Absolutely.
I would love for you to share your story if that felt okay.
I'm always happy to talk about it. I feel like the more people that know, the more change will happen.
I just respect that so much because it's
the only way to get heard and to make a difference, because until something happens to these lawmakers, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, and I am a little bit familiar with Colorado's laws, especially with, there was a lot of, maybe like a year ago or somewhat, a lot going on with family court and laws and about this particular family.
Yeah, there was some really devastating things here as well. Yeah, I would love that.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
You should definitely arrange that. And then, my website, learnwithlittlhouse.com.
All right, I will put all of that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm always open to conversations and talking. It's important work. So
absolutely
passionately about it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Gray Minds Think Alike and sharing your insights and heart on co-parenting and child safety and the importance of putting kids first. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Royster's Kids First Co-Parenting Program, visit learnwithlittlhouse.com. And remember, you're not alone. Your voice matters. Stay strong, connected, keep listening, subscribe, share it with anyone who needs it, and help us continue spreading awareness and support. So thank you again, Karalynn, and we will be in touch.
Thank you, Ali. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. If there's someone that you want to hear from on this podcast, please feel free to send me an email. Or if you would like to be a guest, please reach out at ali@graysonschoice.org. If you would like to continue to hear our podcast, please consider donating at graysonschoice.org. Any amount helps to fund our mission to help protect our children.